Hi, I'm Andy Schmuckler. Uh, my purpose in doing videos is almost entirely about uh, how can American democracy be saved from a force of fascism that has arisen, and also to how can human civilization uh, be saved from taking a path to self-destruction. But there are other things in the world besides my preoccupations, and one of them has to do with the human condition, or the set of things. And I'm a human being who is less than 3 months from his 78th birthday, and for a variety of reasons, I'm having to deal with a part of the human condition, which is that we get older, that our life doesn't last forever, and that sometimes life lasts longer than some aspects of life that one had placed a lot of value on. It could last longer than your ability to remember what happened 10 minutes ago. It could last longer than your ability to walk. So there's a reality there. And I know from talking to friends that this is a lot of people are dealing with aging. It's kind of surprising to me. It must be like this has been going on all the time. Like when I was in my 20s and 30s, there was a group of people who are dealing with what we're dealing with now. But still, there are aspects of being in a community of people who are experiencing aspects of human temporariness. Yeah, I'm taken by surprise. I don't know if other people are. Uh, I could ask them, but anyway, I know that people are dealing with stuff, and so I thought that maybe it would be useful for me to uh, work on this issue in some sharing kind of a way. Not as a guy who has answers, but a guy who's facing my own version of the challenges that a lot of people are facing. I don't know if this would be of interest to people before a certain age, whatever that is. But when most of my videos, the audience I'm imagining are people in their 20s and 30s. Maybe here and there a very bright teenager. Well, or somebody 16 or more, probably 18 or more. But anyway, of the age at which people are looking for big answers, if they ever look for big answers. I don't know if the young people today are looking for big answers, but it seems like to me like people do. And that's part of what, people explore questions while they're in college that they're less likely to really look into seriously and later, come up with whatever you come up with or fail to come up with, and then you live your life as an adult. Since I'm trying to get a way of looking at things out into the world, I'm looking at the kind of people who might say, "Oh, okay, well, I've looked at this and I've looked at that and I've looked at that. Well, maybe this guy Schmuckler's got something I should look at too," and then I'll go look at it. But here I'm not sure if what I have to say here is. I don't know if I'd have found it interesting in my 20s. I seem to have ignored the question of what getting old might mean and what the relationship between the old and the young might be. In that respect, I feel like with my regular audience, there's some aspects of being an old man that I dig. Uh, I'm happy to walk into that role, be more the wise old man than I would have felt able to be when I had something to say when I was 40. It's I don't know, something. There's something in the culture, and there's something in the human reality that makes the wise old man or the wise old woman a plausible and important figure. And I kind of dig that. But mostly, aging is not about such happy Yoda-like stuff, or Obi-Wan. I guess might be more my style. You know, something rather the Force, Luke. Was that phrase? Uh, anyway, I'm here to teach about the Force, uh, the battle between two forces. Actually, that we have to put a strong shoulder behind. But I'm also aware of some that I've had difficulty wrapping my mind around. Pretty much forever. Yeah, I've always known I'm mortal. All men are mortal. Famous syllogism begins. Um, it's not like I didn't understand that when I was 5. I remember thinking about this stuff when I was 5, and um, you know, I figured I had till at least till 70, and didn't have to worry. But there's always been a part of me that can hardly imagine me as something temporary. Uh, you know, I don't have, I don't seem to be confused about how the world, um, the world consisted of before, early or mid 1945 when it came into existence in some fashion. It's a zygote or whatever. Um, there's a lot of time out there without me. Um, but, I've been around continuously since 1946. It seems like there's no way that could end. Uh, I don't I don't quite know how to grasp the idea of a post Andy Schmuckler future, though obviously there's going to be one. You know, I'm often studying little biographies or big biographies on Wikipedia or in books about people who have died. And it's amazing how many people have died. It's you take a picture from the World War II era, and you're virtually certain that everybody in the picture is dead. I have difficulty wrapping my mind around that, not only with respect to me, but I watch old movies and I study a little bit about the creative people, the actors and actresses, and sometimes directors, and who made this thing that I've experienced in a somewhat meaningful way. And I have difficulty at some level recognizing that, accepting, wrapping my mind around the idea that these people who are, like larger than life out there, up there on the screen, and especially, um, you know, uh, well, a bit the heroes that I've identified with that are sort of bigger than life, but maybe especially the beauty of women. Uh, the movies serve up in such generous. They choose people that we want to look at, and it's very moving to me. And then to see um, that this lovely creature uh, died such and such a time and such a way. Um, Audrey Hepburn, who's I go for the lovely smaller types. She wasn't short, but she was slender, and I have a bit of a crush on her. Um, and Teresa Wright, such a lovely presence in those World War II era movies, um, and she got to be um, a really old lady. Um, I've seen pictures of what tremendously, movingly beautiful women become as they get older, and then they die. That even that almost divinity uh, um, of this being a movie star, male or female. Um, I don't really believe any of this stuff. Of course, they live regular human lives. Of course, there are people that came from the families they came from. Judy Garland from up in northern Minnesota, having the name, what was it, Gum, and then uh, getting that terrible experience being a movie celebrity that basically killed her. Yet, giving us these things. How does that go out of existence? How is it that I have trouble seeing the temporariness of even the greatest intelligences, and how Shakespeare wrote those things for a while and then he was no more, and how Bach wrote those things for a while and then he was no more. It's I think that there's a self centeredness of my map of the cosmos that gets in the way. Um, Not all the time, and not only. I mean, I'm devoted to the larger picture, but there's a part of me um, that's pretty focused on me, and imagining the world going on, 10 years from now, or maybe up to you know up to 20 years from now. Yeah, just going out of the world. Which reminds me, one of the things that I wrestle with is a kind of conflict between my ambition to prolong this thing as long as I can. You know, um, I try to take really good care of myself. I'm willing to be a mechanic. I got myself a good doctor. I try to be knowledgeable, and everything I know to do, I'm basically doing, except I'm lazy about exercise, but not too bad. I get a B minus maybe on that stuff, but one of the things I've noticed is that the people who get into their 90s, it doesn't always look like a victory. I knew a fellow out here in the Shenandoah County. We got to be friends when he was fairly far down the lane of being aged. Um, did not have the brilliance that he had when he was the impresario of the Smithsonian, which is the name of the autobiography he wrote. Did things like create, what's that happens on the mall, Folks Festival or something like that. Anyway, he was quite a guy. And he was still quite a guy when I met him. But then, 6 or 7 years later, he succeeded in getting out of his 80s intact, alive. But by the last time I saw him, I wouldn't want to be like that. His mobility, okay, I could give up mobility. But between the issues of hearing, but especially issues of cognitive capability, talking with him was no longer anything like what it had been. I'm not sure I want to win like that. Uh, and there's a big part of me that wants to just pretend that because I'm capable now, I can split the wood still, I can schlep it down to the wood rack, I can go for walks down our hill through the forest and work my way back. I can schlep the branches I trim down the hill in a heavy bundle that gets me panting. I can do those things, and then I can come up here and enter into this studio, and, and I can put together my thoughts fairly well. I don't miss much at this level um, that, that I used to have. I used to be able to juggle more ideas in my mind. I've had a lot of years since I lost that to develop other ways of getting things done. Basically, but even so, there are ways in which I'm already experiencing that there are deteriorations. Um, for example, balance. There will be moments like on this hill where sometimes I'll slip on something muddy or something like that, where I can see that I do not have the same understanding of which direction is up that I had when I was younger. Uh, that's just that's just the way it is. Um, uh, but it's okay. It, I'm being more careful when I put myself in a position where I might fall than I used to be. Um, that's okay. It doesn't, you know, but I can see where things are heading. That's, that's really the point. There are a whole bunch of those little things. Am more likely to inadvertently choke on my saliva, and sometime, a few times in the course of a week, or maybe some days several times. Um, my doctor says, well, that's a natural part of aging. Okay, I'm not going to get pneumonia from anything that's happening now, but still, the things are are falling apart. So, um, but the thing that has been most surprising to me that I had never thought about before is that when I got older, a big part of my life would be my relationships with people who have likewise been getting older. We've got some young people in our lives, but the people who have been friends since high school or college or whenever in our lives we picked up a friendship are going to be people who, though they were once in their teens or we knew them in their 20s, now in the like us. Um, it's been hard. I, it brings things home. I have one friend who's a woman who's born the same year I was, who has been one of the world's great talkers, really fun to converse with, who made a living talking to banks, financial institutions, about their relationship with money, and was a psychotherapist. She and her husband got together at the same time as April and I did, which is to say, 40 years ago this spring. We had a friendship with them ever since. She's now got the equivalent of Lou Gehrig's disease. It's something a little different, but it's killing her. I think she's in hospice now, and she hasn't been able to communicate worth beans for a long time. This disease I find so terrifying. I think I'd want out. I can't think of anything scarier than have. Apparently, with the ALS or this thing whose name I forget, you continue to have the full understanding. You're still you at the level of your own internal consciousness, but you can't do a thing. And eventually you can't even sustain yourself. I find that the idea of not being able to communicate, there's some kind of isolation that's sort of in here. Part of my being from the beginning. I think I can see how it happened in my family in a way, but that aside, I find it very scary. And there she is. And, in any event, she's being killed by this thing. And we had another friend who was killed by ALS, and we watched her deteriorate. And we had a good friend in New Mexico, a really sweet guy, who seemed to have beaten aging because he was able in his late 70s to play competitive basketball at a national level for a very senior category. Now, I used to be a basketball player, but it's been a long time since I would have played competitive basketball. I think, well, I moved out here when I was 45. That was the end of my competitive basketball career. Just didn't have any friends out here who played. But still, anyway, here's this guy who's 78, and he's a valuable player. I mean, it had helped that he was 6'7" or something like that, which I'm 5'10", but still, he was good, and he had kept himself good. And it seemed like here's a guy who beat it. Then he gets this Lewy body dementia. And his wife, dear friend of my wife's, who they talked. They had a regularly scheduled 2-hour transcontinental conversation in which they would talk about meaningful things, having read something together. Anyway, taking care of her husband eventually got to the point where that relationship had to be put on hold between the two women who did these great things together. And then he's recently died. But in the meanwhile, they moved into a retirement home in New Mexico because she had to get into an environment where she had more help. But people say that is not really a very good time to get in. And April and I have been really trying to think and feel right and wisely about aging in relation to what do we do after this? I mean, we live on a mountain where just walking up to the top of the ridge to get the mail is not something you can assume you're going to be able to do. Well, you won't be able to do it forever. The question then arises, well, how long are you going to be able to do it? There's an uncertainty. And there's a saying that April quotes that she got from her sister. I think it's from her sister. You can either be 5 years too early or 5 minutes too late, meaning you want to get yourself in there when what happens when you make a transition to a different level than independent living. You're well situated, but if you're already not well situated for independent living, then maybe you don't get into the place. I think that that might be the, how it is. But so we've been trying to figure out, like, well, what would be next. And it is amazing for people, a couple who have, I think we generally do really well at making decisions together. We've been wrestling with this for about 10 years and, really getting nowhere. But then in the last, I guess it might be a year ago, I think something our son said sort of goaded us into actually doing something. So we've gone to some retirement homes. And now we've discovered one that I think that we're leaning toward. This would be the one. It's called Riderwood, and it's just outside the Washington Beltway. And it's mostly a really fine-looking thing, considering that it's for old people. There's a problem I feel about being located where that thing is located. But it's a lovely campus if you can tune out the fact that you're sitting there at the conjunction of I-95, for Christ's sake, and the Washington Beltway, like just a few miles away. If you can get rid of the feeling of alienation that would mean for me that I'm sitting there in such a place and just focus on the lovely campus here. Little concern, but the alternative is to live out here in the Shenandoah County, where we found a place where we feel like we could be fine. And my concern there is this a community of people where I'll feel like I've got a community of kindred spirits? I think that this one in the Washington area is more likely. I think I'm a kind of a weird bird out here in rural Virginia, but that what I am is not really so unusual in an old folks home, which has a whole bunch of people who were in senior positions in American cabinets, or were in large, big time legal firms, or were professors at this university or that. I don't know about that. That's part of what I intend to find out. But in any event, the reason I lean toward the one in the Washington area is that when I make this move, I want to make a move into an environment where I feel like I can engage with people in a way I find rewarding. And I'm always happy to engage with just about anybody for 10 or 15 minutes. But there are not everybody do I find I can engage with beyond the superficial level of things. Anyway, so that's I really owe it to the place that's out here to create some kind of an event, which I could do. I've given a sermon in this area. I can. I should really advertise in some way to attract the audience that would tell me whether there's people interested in what somebody like me would have. But and then there's the moving, and that is where I wrestle with the whole issue of aging. There's a big part of me that doesn't want to deal with this. Okay, you can maybe be 5 minutes too late. Well, I'm willing. I want to play this hand out as far as I can. I love this house. I love the autonomy that we have. I love the fact that I can look out through my window and see Great North Mountain through a magnificent forest of maples and oaks. Yeah, am I willing to give that up in order to cope with the inevitability of aging. I mean, I would never move from this mountain if there were no such thing as my temporariness. If I could keep all my goodies forever, why would I leave? I'm not saying I wouldn't. I mean, maybe I would decide, oh, let's see what it's like to live for a while in Paris, or let's see what it's like to live for a while in London, or let's see what it's like to live for a while on near Monterey, California, something like that. I mean, there's a lot of adventures that one might have, but I got no impulse to leave this area. But I need to plan for how I'm going to leave this place, and I don't find it easy to wrap my mind around it. April says she's willing to consider, to plan on moving in 3 years. I'm not willing to think that way. But am I being a fool? Am I postponing what I should tackle now? Is this the part of me that's always been in denial about my mortality, sort of making me take some bad choices? I don't really. But I thought I would raise some of these issues. I expect that there are people out there who can relate to them. Because I hear my friends trying to relate to them. My best friend from college is dealing with a variety of age-related issues, and he's doing it in good humor. He's really accepting of the decline. Not that he likes it, but he's not in denial and not acting the way I would. How could this possibly happen to me? That piece of me, I don't see showing up in him. So I'm looking at him as an example of wisdom and the kind in action. My brother, who feels like he's lost a fair amount of ground, has adjusted to that and feels gratitude for everything that he continues to have. I try to learn from that. But in the meanwhile, I'm also appreciative that old age does confer some good things. I mean, if you work at things long enough, you make some progress. So there's an aspect of liking what got achieved. I always liked the image of the wise elder. I liked Obi-Wan in the Star Wars movie, and then also Yoda. When I first got the beginnings of sort of a vision about the sacredness of life on Earth, there was a sense that I had that the way to present the ideas I was beginning to get was to create a narrative in which these young people would come upon this cabin in the woods, would encounter there a wise old man. And I actually began trying to write such a thing. I didn't get much of anywhere with it. But it has always been a part of my sense of how some important things get conveyed. When I taught, was invited to design a course about education when I first got onto the faculty of Prescott College in Prescott, Arizona, in the fall of 1973. I put together a compendium of stories that had to do with like masters and disciples. I had a Zen story. I had the Sufi story. I had a story with Socrates and one of those conversations. There is something that I feel is fundamental, or at least it's fundamental for me, about the place in the development of the human spirit, of what can be imparted by some old man who's been doing the work to get someplace on that big and deep picture. Obi-Wan understands the big picture in which there is this force. This is the first that Luke gets to conceive of there being something other than the concrete. That's analogous to what I've been trying to convey. So I'm happy to step into that Obi-Wan role and claim that as an old man, I've done the work in this respect and take on to myself, trying to talk to young people of, please let me show you a few things. So that's the upside of aging, but still, that ain't much of an upside. You know, I contemplate falling apart and vanishing from the scene. I mean, just the fact of that is bad enough, but then also to contemplate some of the potential routes you might take to get there. I much would prefer to be in decent, presentable condition and plop over dead than to drift in an ugly way over to the exit, leaving everybody with recollection of you, the most recent memory of you as being this thing one doesn't want to be. So that's something else I do wrestle with. What am I going to do about that issue that I really don't want to be seen the way I saw my 94-year-old friend in such a state? And I went through that when my mother died. She lived here with us. That was an experience like no other. As the cancer took her over the course of several months. The morphine that the hospice people gave her made her crazy. It gave me memories that I wasn't happy to be left with. I have managed to hold on to the better memories, but still, I don't like the idea that my children would spend any time seeing me in that shape. So what do I do about that? Is it just a risk I got to take? There was a movie called Still Alice, I think it is, with Julianne Moore playing this highly intelligent woman who is, I think, a professor actually of neurology or something like that. So she really knows when she sees that she is developing Alzheimer's disease. And she she tries to set up a means by which the future her will commit suicide by following instructions on a video. Anyway, it's a tricky setup that ends up not working. The question of when would you pull the plug also arises. I don't like that question. I really don't, but I also don't. I wouldn't want to take what my friend who used to talk to people about their relationship with money. I wouldn't want to have taken that train all the way to the terminal. I'm for sure how to think about that. That seems to be an issue in our society, but I feel fairly clear that not all life is better than no life. Some have a negative value to them that make ending that life a net plus. But it sort of requires a hard judgment. And it also requires that you set things up so that you can execute a rational choice of not perpetuating a life that's become less than worth nothing. Very attached to being alive, and I think that attachment is part of why there's a part of me which denies that, eventually I have to give it up. I don't deal with loss all that well. I really like to be able to hold on to most everything, and everything I value is embedded in my experience. Come a time when I don't have any experience, and obviously I'm having to let go of everything I value. So it's hard. I invite people to provide comments anywhere along the line here, provide testimony about what you're dealing with in terms of it, of aging. I'd be interested to know whether any of this stuff seems worth hearing about for somebody who's got decades to go before they're in a position like mine. I'd be interested in knowing if it's nonetheless interesting or really beside the point. Either way, it's okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. Please check out some of the more important things I have to say that I'm dedicating myself to getting out there on my website, abetterhumanstory.org. And please subscribe to this channel so that we can get out there some ideas that are actually could be useful for helping American democracy survive, and actually might be useful for helping human civilization itself to survive on this planet, which is far from assured at this moment. Bye-bye.